Hello everyone, welcome back to the reason I took a shower today, where yes, today we are looking at a TWAB, or now known as This Week in Destiny. But the reason I'm making a recording for this one, other than the fact that I don't have a lot of time today, is because we're going to be reacting to essentially Bungie's feedback to the community's feedback from a Twitter post that they put up June 7th, so a little over a week ago. I'll put the tweet right here, blam. And so Bungie asked for a bunch of feedback. We're putting out a call for any ability, armor, build, crafting, weapon-specific questions, feedback you have about the live game. And as soon as I saw that they started to respond in today's This Week in Destiny, I thought, hey, that's some free reaction content for your boy. So we're going to look at some of the questions that people asked. I probably should have made a video on the thread itself, because I'm sure there were some very interesting takes. Maybe I'll dig through and see if there's some stuff that we can still react to after the fact. But these are the things that Bungie decided to actually talk about. And so I'm going to just read their answers and we're going to react. And, you know, I'm going to be a real YouTuber. 2023 reaction content. Here we go. First question, in PvE, ability uptime is very high and has increased despite global changes to base cooldowns. What are the current thoughts on the ability energy economy? Yeah, so Bungie in Lightfall basically made it so the previous tier 8 was becoming the new tier 10. So like tier 9 and tier 10, as we knew it back then, were basically getting retired because ability cooldowns were just out of control. And the current game also basically doesn't even feel like that change even happened. So Bungie says the ability energy economy is something we're always evaluating and adjusting. With the massive number of sources that can grant ability energy, it's always an area of concern. While we don't have any sweeping changes to announce today, this is a continued area of focus for us. We don't want ability uptime to balloon to a point where the power spike from active abilities ceases to become a spike and becomes the norm. So it kind of does almost feel like the norm, but probably more with certain builds more than others. I'm actually writing a video right now where I'm kind of talking about legendary weapons, like not really feeling that great right now. And that's partly, I think, because we have such a diverse amount of ways to engage the enemy now compared to where we used to be, you know, not even 2 years ago, right? So I'm glad that they don't have any sweeping changes to announce today, because I do feel like build crafting is pretty good at the moment. But you know, there's definitely some problem areas. You know, I think oh boy, they're talking about Tangles right now. So I don't know if they're going to talk about Strand. Okay, never mind. They literally talk about Strand right here. I have been saying that I think Strand suspension is gonna get a hit. So we'll see. Let's just move on and see what they say. With aspects of armor mods and artifact perks that rely on players being able to throw or destroy created tangles, the cooldown can feel frustrating. What's the intent behind the creation cooldown time? Any plans to revisit it? So they say, during Strand development, we experimented with a significantly lower tangle creation cooldown time. When it was too low, combat became extremely chaotic with random explosions going off over the battlefield. We don't have any plans to go back to that level of uptime, but we agree that competition around tangles can be frustrating. In Season 22, we're planning on reducing the tangle cooldown time from 15 to 12 seconds. I think that's pretty fair. I literally just made a video on Strand and the new aspects that we got, and a lot of people were complaining about the Wanderer. By the way, I know one other piece of feedback was that you could throw the tangles like really, really fast with the Wanderer and grapple to them. I didn't include that because it wasn't really the thing that I wanted to focus on. It just, that kind of seemed like a novelty, and I really wanted to address the more gameplay specific aspects of the Wanderer. But yeah, I used the Wanderer to pretty good success. But I still agree that a 15-second tangle cooldown can feel a little bit long, especially now that we're like next season, we're probably not going to have any sort of Strand type perks in the season artifact. And, you know, again, when Tangles in Season 20 had all these different crazy buffs from the artifact, and like they were doing AoE damage and suspensions and blah, 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 like 15 seconds was fine. But when we don't have the insanity of that, 15 seconds does feel a little bit long. So I think 12 is good. I think probably the most they would have done is 10, but I think 12 is good. Decent little reduction, so you at least have a little more uptime. You go from 4 tangles to 5 tangles per minute. Okay. Next, Brood Weavers were intended to be the minion masters of Strand, but Threadlings can feel underwhelming in high-end content, especially with the potency of Suspend. I think my voice cracked there. Are there any plans to adjust this relationship going forward? Yeah, Threadlings, pretty underwhelming in high-end content. Absolutely, 100% agree with that. In mid to low tier stuff, when you can literally just have a giant wave of minions go out and just annihilate everything, it's really, really satisfying. But in something like a master or a GM, it'll just like hit a goblin for like 40% of its health, and it's just like, cool. Glad I invested a lot of resources into this. We're working on a two-pronged approach to this problem in Season 22. We agree that it can be too hard for Threadlings to feel valuable as combatant health increases in high-difficulty PvE content. We also believe here it comes. We also believe that Suspend is currently too strong in PvE. For Season 22, we're implementing a sizable increase in Threadling damage against PvE targets and reducing the duration and uptime of Suspend sources in PvE. In addition, we're making a change to the Broodweaver's next strand aspect, the Wanderer, to address community feedback regarding its potency. Okay, Threadling. I'm liking the sizable increase in Threadling damage because Threadlings were a very big feature of Strand. They're very underwhelming right now, even on Warlock, where like their entire purpose is to make Threadlings. So I like that. This does not surprise me in the slightest that Bungie thinks Suspend is currently too strong in PvE. Strand Hunters, Strand Titans can basically infinitely crowd control most targets in the game if they want to. If they want to set up for it, they can infinite Suspend things. Hunter, you got 2 dive bombs, you got 2 shackles right now, and one of those is going to come back by the time you run out of all 4 of them. So you can probably do about 5 to 6 back-to-back. Strand Titan just has huge just AoE potential for suspending many targets, and then you can get that back super, super fast. This does not surprise me in the slightest, and I think if you didn't see this coming, I don't know what game you're playing, but yeah, it's a bit much. Right? How long can you suspend a target right now? 12 seconds with the boosting fragment thread of continuity? Like it's like 12 seconds or something like that. That's insane. That is crazy. Do I think they're going to nerf Suspend enough that these Suspend builds won't continue to be good? No. I think base duration right now is 8 seconds, boosting it up to 12. I could see them bringing base duration down. Like, this sounds brutal. I could see them even going down to 4 seconds at base and then 6 seconds for the extended. That might be a bit extreme, because it depends on how they want to view Suspend. Like, do they want it to be more of like an interrupt, or do they want it to be like a full crowd control thing? Is this also in response to Stasis feeling the way that it does? Because Stasis has basically felt power crept out of the game because of Suspend, right? Because Suspend just does what Freeze does, but way better. You can hit the enemy while they're suspended. So this might also be a thing to maybe get Stasis a bit more back into the limelight. But yeah, this, I mean, I agree. I completely agree with this. I'm sorry. I agree with this. Wanderer addressing community feedback regarding its potency. I'm interested to see what they do. I really want to see how people have been using the Wanderer. I think some of the feedback that I've seen was like, people are stealing my Tangles, that's kind of a different issue. That's not directly related to the Wanderer itself. But in high-end content, I actually was quite impressed with the Wanderer, just, in comparison to how some people were reacting to it. But I think I'd want to see more of like, how are people using the Wanderer right now? Why do people feel like it's underwhelming in that regard? Because I'm mainly focused on higher end content, right? Legends, your masters, your GMs. I'm not really concerned with how it's performing in the lower tier, because anything works in the lower tier, right? So interested to see what they do to increase its potency. Next, how does the team feel about the current suite of grenades? Okay. We want all grenades to feel viable. Some grenades are fundamentally better suited to specific situations or modes. We don't expect perfect equalization as a result, but we want to avoid situations where a single option is clearly the best across many different combat roles, making some adjustments to the uptime of a few underperforming grenade options, and we'll continue to evaluate. I don't know what kind of... I hear you opening the door, and I'm like, oh, you must really need something right now.
No, I just haven't done a penis in a while. Thought it'd be funny for old times.
That's fair. Brimstone? Oh, the cute little brim. I forgot what I was talking about. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what kind of an answer that someone was expecting. This is such a very, very open-ended question. Obviously, some grenades are performing better than others. Wouldn't mind seeing some buffs to underperforming grenades, but I feel like that's really all you can say about this question. So I'm I'm not gonna go into every single grenade. Yeah, some grenades are really good, some grenades are not so good. Please buff the not so good ones. Moving on. Weapons. Can/will hand cannons get a buff? Not quite to Shadowkeep levels, but at least something. So yeah, as I was talking about earlier, I am working on a video, although, I mean, maybe not anymore after this article, about how legendary weapons, a good amount of legendary weapons, basically anything that isn't like a bow or an SMG feels like meh, or like 720 RPM auto rifles still kind of feel okay. But like right now, a lot of things just feel not great. So let's see what they have to say. Note that hand cannons have been touched several times over the past few years, and the current PvE damage numbers mean that compared to pre-Shadowkeep, they currently deal roughly the same damage per crit and almost double the body damage. Reverting to Shadowkeep numbers would be a substantial nerf for anyone who ever misses a crit, which we're not planning to do. The overall balance of PvE has changed substantially over the last few years, though, and some weapons have suffered as a result. So the reason why a lot of people keep referring to Shadowkeep is, if you weren't around at the time, at Shadowkeep, or when Shadowkeep first came out, Bungie introduced a big nerf to basically all weapons, where you wouldn't deal bonus crit damage anymore to red bar enemies, like what they call rank and file, what I've been calling like low tier or junk enemies. And a lot of people have pointed to this change as the reason why weapons don't really feel that good. And for, since Shadowkeep, I really don't think it's been a super crazy big deal, but I've also always been a person that has gravitated towards like, what's the best meta stuff? And I don't really care about stuff that isn't that, which is, not the greatest line of thinking. And if I do end up making this other video, we'll kind of talk about that more. But this is very interesting. Compared to pre-Shadowkeep, they deal roughly the same damage per crit. So we're almost back to pre-Shadowkeep, but I kind of agree that hand cannons right now in PvE are just kind of like, ugh. Like, they're still not. And even though they got an extra 20% damage boost in Season 20, like, they still just don't feel like, ugh. Like, the video that I'm working on, again, I'm sorry to keep bringing up a video that literally doesn't even exist yet, but the video that I'm talking about is going to talk about Quicksilver Storm and how I think Quicksilver Storm is the best primary weapon in the game, and it's not even close for PvE. I think it's an insane weapon. So this is part of the reason why I tend to not really care about why aren't pulses doing that well? My point of view would just be put on Quicksilver Storm. Literally, what are you doing? Quicksilver Storm is an insane weapon. Get it, put it on. You will lose any problems that you had with the game in terms of dealing damage to enemies, because it's just so good. But that's not a healthy way to balance the game. It's just just move to the meta stuff. So yeah, a lot of legendary options are just not feeling really good right now. Sorry, let's keep reading this. This didn't move the needle as much as we'd like. Hand cannons still struggle to find a niche in PvE. Their damage output is comparable to other weapon types, but their reload and smallish magazine make it painful to run out of ammo. There's some room to bump them up in a little more against minor enemies. But what if they did what they looked like and became a primary ammo option for chunking down tougher single enemies? Here's what we're currently playtesting for a future season. Numbers still may change, along with a quick preview of specific hand cannons that we felt languished more than most. Increased reload speed at 0 stat by 15%. This benefit scales down an increasing stat with 100 stat being unchanged. This is a substantial benefit to hand cannons with low reload stats, which include several aggressive and precision hand cannons. Oh, I'm always going to be on board with buffs. PvE damage. Increased damage against minors by 20%. Increased damage against majors by 75%. Heavy burst hand cannons. Change the Warden's Law legendary hand cannon to be the first member of a new subfamily, heavy burst hand cannon. This fires a 2-round burst and is much more satisfying to use than the previous version while still benefiting from some of the unique properties of the original. Okay. This sounds interesting. I don't really like to comment on things too much before they're actually in the game because things read a lot differently than they play. I'm on board with this. I'm completely on board with this because right now I think hand cannons are just really, really tame. And even with this damage buff, they still just don't really feel that great in PvE. I think a lot of people also don't realize or maybe don't even know that exotic primaries get like a 40% damage boost to or against red bar enemies, which is why a lot of exotic weapons or exotic primaries feel really, really good right now versus their legendary counterparts. Not only do they get that 40% damage boost, but it's on top of the fact that legendaries just also don't really feel that good right now. So I'm on board with this. We'll see how it plays. See how it plays in game. You know, again, the reason I don't like to say like, oh, this is totally going to change hand cannons now is because like they got an extra 20% damage boost and people still don't care, right? You see 20% is a lot. That's a big boost and people still didn't care. So let's see it in game. But right now, this is encouraging. Kinetic Weapons seems to be falling behind as builds get more intricate. Are there any plans or ideas to make them more interesting to help them integrate them into builds? So I think it was Season 20. Kinetic Weapons now get even more of a boost, and I think they actually they dialed down Stasis and Strand weapons in order to try to make Kinetic Weapons more enticing, right? Because you don't have that subclass integration like you do with elemental primary weapons. So they needed to give something to kinetic weapons in order to make them some level of competitive. And they said, we've also noticed this. We've poked at the issue a little bit with the damage increase versus unshielded enemies and the kinetic tremors perk. Kinetic tremors, not the insanity that I thought it was, but I also haven't used kinetic tremors in the spot where I think it would shine the most, which is master and GM content, because I've been using Quicksilver Storm, because Quicksilver Storm is an insane weapon. So I haven't even used a gun in a GM or a master piece of content with kinetic tremors because I don't need to, because I've just been on Quicksilver Storm. But I'm sure it's good in that high level content where enemies actually survive long enough for you to proc kinetic tremors. But we've also prioritized shipping more strand and stasis weapons in the kinetic slot to equalize those numbers a little and ensure that all slots can tie into build crafting. We're continuing to look at kinetic and something planned on a year of the final shape timeline. That may make them a little more unique, but maybe it's time for that kinetic subclass? Probably not. Okay, I'm glad they kind of shut that down, because I still see people be like, do you think they should make a kinetic subclass? Like, guys, it's not how the game works. It's not how the game works, okay? All right, let's move on here. How's the team feeling about Glaives? What about the exotic Glaives? So, Glaives. I know there are Glaive specialists out there, and a bunch of my buddies have been getting aboard the Glaive train because of the shield that they can do and all that kind of stuff. But I think to the average player, Glaives are still just kind of a meme. And I think that's what Bungie is focusing on when they speak about Glaives. I know there's Glaive lords out there, people using Glaives and GMs and stuff. Dude, I ran 3 GMs and like 2 of the 3 runs. I had someone on my team with a Glaive. And we cleared it no problem. So they offer really, really high defensive capabilities. And but I think people just haven't really they haven't learned how to use them to their maximum effect yet. Only the Glaive Lords have really done that. And to the rest of the community, they're just still kind of a meme. So we've got a substantial Glaive tuning pass coming in a future season. Currently, this is season 23, aiming to make them more satisfying to use, particularly in PvP. Okay, my issue is not even with PvP. It's more PvE based. Shocker, I know. But okay, we're not happy with the current state of the class-specific exotic glaives, and we're making some major changes to them where we touch all glaives up. This will likely take the form of adjusting how players activate the exotic perk, along with some other changes. I'm on board. I think glaives need to be made a little bit more accessible to the general public, I feel like. And I mean, the exotic glaives, I think Vexcalibur got a good amount of hype because of its capabilities, but even still, like the class glaives, like I know Bungie did a tuning pass on them a little while ago, but they are still, I mean, Edge of Concurrence is the hunter one, and you can essentially replace it with a forbearance, right, or a wave frame grenade launcher, and you're probably fine. So, yeah, I would like to definitely see some more adjustments. I mean, they can do anything they want to those things, basically. I don't think anyone would complain too much about what they do. Okay, next. How do you determine what gets nerfed and what gets buffed? Do those parameters change season over season? Just to comment on the persistent Bungie balances. Oh, okay. Just to comment on the persistent Bungie balances based on usage narrative. This is not the case. See below. But note that if something is wildly overused, in many cases, that's because it's both strong and easy to use. Players typically won't flock to a specific weapon in droves if it's perfectly balanced. Thank you. Oh, thank you. Oh, I'm so tired of seeing this piece of feedback everywhere whenever anything gets nerfed. Bungie only nerfs stuff because it's popular. Why do you think it got popular in the first place, huh? Because everyone tells people how easy it is or how good it is. Bungie is not out here nerfing stuff that's mid, okay? Stuff that's mid is not popular. Things are popular because they're good. It's like, I don't know how people just... I've seen this piece of feedback so much. Things get nerfed because they're too good. And if something's really good, then you're going to have YouTubers and you're going to have streamers and you're going to have Twitter and you're going to have Reddit and you're going to have social media all talking about how good this thing is. Okay? Information's not kept a secret. Okay? That's why I tend to not focus on things that I haven't heard a lot of news about, because chances are, with how many creators there are out there, and even non-creators, just random people, if something was truly that level of good, it wouldn't be a secret. Okay? People love to tell other people about super good stuff. Moving on. When we're deciding what to do for a balance pass, we look at 5 main sources of information to identify what we ought to look at. Internal feedback from playtesting. Designers have around 10 hours of playtests a week. And our own experiences playing the live game. Designers typically play the game heavily. We carve out a little each time to do trials. Live feedback source from players. Weapon usage. We typically look at usage by owners so as to not miss what's going on with low ownership weapons, weapon effectiveness, kills per time equipped, win rate, so forth. Design analysis of the implementation of the weapon, looking through the weapon perks and other data to see if something is obviously wrong. Having pulled together a list of weapons, we go through them and identify what's contributing to the issues. In some cases, it's innate to the weapon itself and we'll adjust it, but in other cases, it's a specific perk or perk combo, the overall weapon type rather than a single weapon, or lack of competition, and we can address the issue without touching the weapon in question. Yes, some of the logic for which weapons get attention changes depending on the focus of the season. If we have high representation of a weapon type in the seasonal artifact, we're shipping several newer reprised weapons of a specific type or encounters that play well with specific weapon types. We'll dig into the matching weapons to make sure they perform well with the season focus from other teams. For example, in the past, sorry, that was a lot of jargon. For example, in the past, we've had seasons that revolved around high-density, close-range encounters with matching artifact unlocks and revisited the tuning of submachine guns and grenade launchers. I mean, I think everything that I wanted to say was at the top there. What things get nerfed and buffed based on their performance. And things that get nerfed are because they are out of the bounds of what is acceptable, right? That's really what it is. And Bungie are the people who determine what is acceptable. I don't really feel like I have anything else to contribute here because Bungie makes all the calls. There is obviously some level of community feedback with a lot of these things, but feedback for something that is blatantly way out of bounds or way out of scope, just to be like, oh, stop nerfing all the popular stuff. Like, stop it. Anyway, any further exotic tuning plan for the future, and what's the thought process behind those planned changes? Just to give some context on timelines, we've shipped Season 21. Season 22 is complete. Season 23 is in full production, and the final shape is entering early production. Small set of changes to exotic weapons coming in Season 22 that we've been playtesting for a few months, including the long-awaited PvP nerf to the Monarch, a buff to Touch of Malice, okay, a couple of minor changes to other exotics, and some tweaks to legendary perks like Bipod, Shoot to Loot, and Over-Under. And this one, the most. Also, bear in mind that the zoom to damage, fall off normalization, and sword guard rework are coming in Season 22 and affect exotic weapons as well. We've pulled several well-tested changes from Season 22 into the Season 21 mid-season balance update, which we'll talk about shortly before it ships. As usual, we're making exotic catalyst for an older exotic weapon Season 22, and this one's been heavily requested and is likely the most complex catalyst we've ever made. The process for exotic tuning is looking at pain points around over or underperforming weapons, and honestly just looking at the 20 least used exotic weapons, and we poke at that list every season. Okay, yeah, so just kind of an extension of what's going on here is like what's not popular, what's not getting used a lot. But even like stuff that's not getting used a lot can still probably be balanced and not get any adjustments just because of how the game's currently existing. Symmetry, I think, is like a super, super fun gun that I would love to use more, but there's just other guns that are better. But it's like Symmetry is an example of a gun that could it use a buff? Sure, but do I think it's like close to balanced the way it is right now? A little bit, but I would need to do a much deeper dive beyond that to really come to any sort of analysis. Exotic armor and build crafting. Question, my favorite exotic armor could use a buff. Any continued plans to balancing legacy exotic armor? So it looks like the answer is yes. We're gonna keep trying to balance exotic armor. Wow, real hot take coming in. What is the expected answer to this question? Any plans to continue balancing legacy exotic armor? Nah, we're done. Nah, we're not gonna do it anymore. Like, of course they're gonna keep looking at stuff as they can do it. Can you explain the recent Stompy changes? Stompy provides great neutral game benefits that excel in PvP and have the potential to make it very difficult to target a hunter wearing them thanks to the unique nature of the hunter jump, which allows for rapid direction changes in mid-air. Our goal was to make them a little less free so that the wearer can still gain their benefit but with a small amount of downtime each time the player uses their dodge, which itself provides numerous benefits since many armor mods key off of the use of your class ability. That being said, we'll continue to monitor how Stompy is performing and make further changes as necessary, aka we think it's fine right now. I'm not a Stompy's hunter. I'm really not. So on paper, this seems very rational, but again, I barely even play hunter PvP, much less my own class, right? So this is something that, again, I think you should refer to your local hunter and talk to them, local Stompy's hunters, and get some more feedback from them. I'm not going to pretend that I'm an expert on Stompy's PvP combat, other than the one time that I used them for a few games forever ago and was just absolutely decimating people. Like, it was insane. Any more plans for exotic armor interactions with exotic weapons like Necrotic Grip has with the Weapons of Sorrow? We feel these special connections between exotics are best when they are a little rare and a little bit hidden. That being said, we would like to add more of them to the game, especially for Hunters and Titans. Keep an eye out for the future. Cool. Will we ever see any of the pre-Lightfall armor mods come back? Okay, we are paying close attention to how the current armor mod system is performing and how it's being received. We want to experiment with fun, novel ways to interact and plan to do so with the seasonal artifact. Okay, it is our goal that the base armor mods are straightforward and approachable. They should be the behind-the-scenes foundations of your builds, not the star elements. So I'm getting hints of no from this. Your mods like what was it called? Surprise attack, like the sidearm one. A lot of these, I think what people are referencing here are the much more specific mods that used to be available pre-Lightfall that potentially became the foundation of a build. Or something to build around, like what was it, explosive ordnance? I think it was another one. Something ordnance, Argent ordnance, with rockets and stuff like that. They have loosened blade in the game on your chest piece, so that is one of few that did survive. But it looks like they are trying to shift. They're trying to shift build crafting to the seasonal artifact. So based on this alone, I am skeptical that we're going to see a bit more of these hyper specific mods coming back to gear. So we'll see. I think a couple of the things that they added this season were pretty good, but they are also still pretty broad, right? They're not hyper specific. Like one of them's like you use your class ability and then you suck in orbs around you. And then the other one is more of an interaction with the collectibles of subclasses. So they're generic. They're still very generic. They're not these hyper-focused things like, when you're using a sidearm, you use all of your armor charge, and the sidearm deals more damage based on how much armor charge you have, and like all these really specific things. It seems like they want to keep that into the artifact. Okay. I think the way now that they're doing the seasonal artifact where it's not just here's your one perk for the season that's like supposed to be the thing. Like they're trying to have multiple builds be possible or enhance multiple builds at the same time within one season, as a way to guide people more towards build crafting without having to, dig through these, dozens of mods on their gear and like try to parse all this stuff together. The way that Bungie has laid out the seasonal artifact now is very intuitive because you can look at all the perks and be like, oh, these are all I should pick up all the strand perks. Or like season 20, for example, with the firebolts, like Bungie very meticulously was like, here's what we want you to do. Here's like the cool build for this season for solar. Double firebolts. They do more scorch damage. Some other things happen with like armor charge and stuff. So that's how I think they want to direct people towards build crafting and in a way raise the collective power level of the community as opposed to this, the previous mod system, which, had a bit more intricacy to it, but for a lot of more casual players was seemingly impenetrable. So, okay. All right. Well, we'll see. We'll see if they come up with any future mods or if, this feedback changes going into the future. Miscellaneous questions. Can we favorite shaders soon, please? Rewards, UI, UX popping in here to answer this one. We're hesitant to talk too much about complex features that aren't far enough along to attach to a specific release, but we're going to be sharing info on some new features in this vein real soon. I just want search. I think the next big feature for Destiny, search bar. Really would love to see a search bar. I know it's a very simple thing to say, just like, what's the big deal? It's a search bar, dude. But like, if this thing wasn't built with that thing in mind, it's always going to be so much tougher than it seems to be. Something like favoriting shaders also seems simple because we have a favorites system built into the game already, but it wasn't built with shaders in mind. It was built with this new thing, and shaders are likely part of like some old architecture thing that, they have to completely decouple from something else. And then, so things are always more complicated than they seem. But that being said, search. I would love search. Any more details regarding HUD UI updates that were previously mentioned? We'll talk about this when we have something to show. Okay. All right, you got you got some of the fashion here. You got some art. I don't think there's anything else. Player support. Blah 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 blah. Yeah, that was the main thing that I want to talk about. So there's another dose of data reaction content for you. But let me know how you're feeling about some of that stuff. Let me know how you're feeling about some of this more reaction style content. I feel like I've always gotten a good amount of positive feedback to these videos, even if they're not. Another reason I script my videos, so loud ass car in the background, not interrupting me. Yeah, let me just know what you think about everything. All right. Talk to you guys later. Thank you for watching, or thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.